Hi everyone, Stepan here. In this video I'm going to go over my round 6 game from Zadar, which I have to say was a very interesting game. It was a completely new experience for me to play a game like this. And I was playing a lower rated opponent, a young opponent, but very talented and much stronger than his rating. We talked to each other the day after the game. We met on the street. And we talked about the game, and I saw that he understood much more than I thought during the game, and it was a fun and a very hard game to play. So why was it new for me? Because ever since I started playing D4, I've never faced the King's Indian defense, only in one training game against a friend, FIDE master Milan Jucev, and where I played the fianchetto, just like here. But that game against Milan went in a completely different direction. I never allowed him to open the position up on the king side with f5. Things never really got messy for my king, and it was just a different type of game. Whereas in this game, I can just say the King's Indian is a very tough opening to face. Okay, so I played d4. He went g6, c4, bishop g7, knight to c3 and d6. G3, knight to f6, and now we have the fianchetto King's Indian. This could still be written as the modern defense because he had started with g6, but not really because I didn't play e4. So it's the King's Indian. Bishop g2, c6. And now the two normal plans in the fianchetto King's Indian for black are either to go knight to d7 and e5, which is the more common way to play, or to go knight to c6, a6, rook to b8, b5, and that's what I faced against Milan. And I sort of know both plans. Now, since he played c6, I'm expecting him to go knight to d7 and d5. So I go knight f3, but he plays a6, and I was a bit confused here. Okay, I mean, you are still preparing b5 with c6 and with a6, but this is slightly different, perhaps imprecise, I'm not sure, move order to prepare your plan, and I simply played a4. He wants to have his knight on c6 and his rook on b8, or at least be able to play rook to b8. Now, queen c7, castles, rook to e1, and here I think white is already slightly better. I don't see the purpose of having played c6 and a6. During the time he played those two moves, he could have already played knight to d7 and e5, which I thought would have been way more useful. Bishop g4, which again I think is a slightly imprecise move. If you're going for b5, then you don't want to weaken this diagonal, meaning you don't want to trade off your bishop for my knight if you're going to be playing b5. If you're not going to be playing b5, and I manage to sort of nullify a6 and c6 with one move, a4, then I don't really agree with bishop g4 either. h3, sort of forcing a trade. The bishop can only go to d7, which takes away the square from the knight, or it could go back. So he basically has to take bishop f3, knight b to d7. And now I had to stop and think. I was quite unfamiliar with this position, a King's Indian setup in which I have the bishop pair. Of course, I have no experience in the King's Indian and almost no experience against the King's Indian, so basically everything is new for me, which is not theory. So I had no idea about this position, and I don't know if this has been played before. Yeah, no games found in the database. I don't know where we deviated. Let me check actually. So this should still, of course, be very theoretical. So here, okay, so there are only 4 games, 7 games with a6, so that's quite an unusual move. Castles is the main line, bishop f5, queen a5 are the normal moves, and after a6, e4 is actually the main move. a4 has only been played once, so I'm guessing that a6 is what brought us out of theory. Bishop f3, knight bd7. Okay, so here I had to start thinking on my own, and I had to start to come up with a plan. So what I did, I expanded in the center first. I don't see the purpose of having my pawn on e2. I want to sort of meet e5 with d5 when it comes. If it doesn't come, I want to play e5 perhaps I want to go d5. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I just knew that having space was going to be fine. And he played d5 immediately. I went d5. And here, whenever this e5 d5 thing happens in the King's Indian, the nature of the position changes, of course, depending on what black does here. He played c5, which I don't really agree with. I think that's not the best idea. I think he could have kept the tension. I'm not really taking on c6, or maybe I am, I don't know. But I don't think he should have played c5. Perhaps taking is better. Perhaps doing nothing is better. Perhaps knight b6 is better. Perhaps knight c5 is better. I didn't like him playing c5. I think it closes his counterplay too much. Of course, he went for the most thematic King's Indian plan for him, and that's moving the knight away and going f5. So that's fine, but I still think that c5 is not precise. c5, I went bishop e3. I want to go queen to d2 and trade the dark squared bishops off. He went knight to e8, and whenever in the King's Indian black moves away the knight from f6, you know that his next move is going to be f5. Still, queen to d2, f5. Whenever f5 is played, you take it. That's usually the rule, especially if you play queen to d2 and are about to lose the bishop if you don't take it. So yeah, take it, because even though black is going to recapture with the g pawn and bring another pawn closer to the center and open up the g file, you are then playing for central control, and most importantly, you are freeing up your e4 square. And what I found very useful in this fianchetto setup, which is probably useful in other setups, is once you capture on f5, you have the e4 square for your c3 knight, which usually doesn't do much unless black blunders away a pawn with b5 or something similar, or you would have to transfer your knight with something like knight to e2, knight to g1, knight to h3, which is possible because you usually don't play h3 here. But anyway, when they play f5, you take it. G takes f5, and now bishop to h6. Here he played queen d8, which I understand and agree with. And now it's basically who is going to get their pieces closer to their opponent's king faster, or closer to the open g file and to the king side. And whose king is safer? For the moment, my king is safer because I have a g pawn, and he is about to lose his defender, his g7 bishop, which happened immediately. Takes, king takes. I'm not sure taking with the king is the most precise way to take. Perhaps taking with the knight is better, although I sort of like his decision. Perhaps I would have taken with the knight myself, because I want the knight to come into f6. I don't really want the knight on h5 or on f5, so I can understand why taking with the king. Okay, and here's my first dubious decision of the game. I think everything was fine so far. Again, I did not look at the game with an engine, nor will I. I have to understand the plans here, and I'm going to try to figure out what went wrong. So in this position I played g4. Why did I play g4? Well, if he plays f4, I get the e4 square on a plate for my knight. The same if he takes, I open the position up and get a square on e4. If he goes queen h4, my plan is to go king to g2 and challenge the f5 pawn later on. So that's what happened in the game. He went queen h4, which I think is the best move, but I still think I have enough for having opened my position up as well. I can use the g file, and more importantly, I need the e4 square. His knights are at the moment superfluous, so both knights are looking at f6. So I don't think that they're as useful. And if I can keep something on e4, and for the moment my bishop, my rook, and my knight are looking at the square, then my rook, if it's here, could switch over to g4 or to h4. If my bishop is here, it's looking at h7, and which in conjunction with my queen is very dangerous. My knight would be looking at g5, f6, attacking the d6 pawn, the c5 pawn. So I think that the e4 square is something I need to create an attack in this position, and I wanted to gain the square at the cost of king safety. So I played g4. Of course, he did not take. As I said, he is a very good player. He played queen to h4. I have to defend, king to g2. And now, yeah, he played king to h8, which I think is the best move. Now, one alternative that I've been looking at is if he plays queen h4, What if I just take on f5 immediately? And after king to h8, or if he goes rook takes f5, then I just go bishop g4, which I think should be fine. I did not lose the tempo on g2. But I was expecting king to h8, which is a much better move. And now knight e4, so that I can meet rook g8 check with knight g3. And if queen takes h3, my plan was to go bishop to g2. And after queen takes f5, rook to a3. And I think that this position is fine for me. I have given up a pawn. For the moment, black has 6 pawns, I have 5. I'm sorry. But I think that my rook is about to get into the game much quicker. And if I can get my king away somehow and either transfer my rook like this without moving the king, or move the king away and go rook h1 and move the king back, then I should have more pieces in the attack than him. But I was afraid of giving up a pawn, didn't really see the purpose of that, didn't see how I was going to regain a pawn unless I get my knight into e4, so I went king g2. King h8, gf5, rook takes f5, and bishop to g4. And after the game, I got very aware of how bad this move was. During the game I wasn't that concerned, but after the game I looked more closely at what I thought was the best black's move in this position, that's rook to g5, and I realized that I barely have a defense to that, and that black should be much better, perhaps even winning, I'm not sure. So after rook to g5, he's of course threatening h5, winning a pawn. So, and there are no tricks with checkmate. Usually in some positions there was queen h6, but for the moment the rook is blocking that, the queen is guarding that. So I would have to go knight e4. And this is the move during the game I thought had to make the position fine for me. I just go knight e4, knight g3, he's not pinning my bishop anymore and has to move the rook, it should be fine. However, once he goes rook g6, which is important because after knight g3, if he goes h5, I don't have queen h6 checkmate, as I said. If he'd gone to, let's say, g7, it's not checkmate, but he's giving me counterplay, and it's important that he covers h6. He now just goes rook to f6, and I'm not sure which rook, probably the d rook. I'm sorry, knight. And what do? I'm about to lose a pawn. I just can't defend. If I move the bishop away, I think I'm in trouble with something like knight h5. I don't want to trade off my bishop because he has another knight. So let's say I do this. Knight h5, bishop takes, queen takes, and the other knight is going to be coming to f6 soon. So once the other knight gets to f6 and the other rook gets to g8, I really don't like my chances in this position. So I think bishop to g4 was a bit too much. Now, a better move, I don't know. Maybe trading stuff off, maybe playing knight e4 immediately. Perhaps knight e4 was the most precise. Just going knight e4 before bishop g4 and allowing one knight to get into f6. But now starting with, yeah, okay, knight takes, yeah, okay, so he is sort of killing my plans. And that's why I wasn't sure about anything else. So after rook takes f5, this seemed like the best option. Maybe bishop e4 first and forcing a trade, but I don't like that either. Or forcing a trade. I'm not forcing a trade. Rook g4, rook g5 is check. So I really don't know. I'm going to have to do some actual analysis from this position. I had a look at this game after the game in Zadar, and now I realize that I need to get back to it. And I know that bishop to g4 is a mistake, but I still don't have viable alternative to that move. So help if you can. Rook to f7 was played, which is bad. As I said, rook to g5 is much better. He wanted to defend his knight, and there's really no need to defend the knight if you can pin the attacker. Rook f7, and I played rook to e3, now saving my position, and he doesn't have time for any of the attacking ideas anymore. Knight e to f6, rook to g3, and here he made a mistake which just gives white a very easy game. In fact, what black could have had after rook to g5, I think white has after black's next move, and I think white has a close to a winning game. he took on g4, and I played rook to g3 not because I thought he would take. I played rook to g3 because I wanted to solidify my position and threaten something on the g file. Of course, after knight takes g4, I take with the pawn. And now, I mean, my king is perfectly safe again. Look at the king safety, and look at the h file. I can finally do something with my other rook. And I also have the e4 square for my knight. So I think all of a sudden, after one mistake, after rook g3, and him taking my bishop, all of a sudden I have everything I want from the position, and it becomes incredibly easy to play. Rook a to f8, knight to e4, defending and attacking at the same time, queen to e7, defending d6, f3, now completely solidifying my position, and now I'm ready to double up on the h file while still defending the f3 weakness. My knight has g5, my knight is putting pressure on d6. It's an incredibly good position now, very easy to play, much better than black's position. He never has knight f6, which was his next mistake. Unfortunately, he did not see that. I was looking forward to a more interesting late middle game here, but knight to f6 just gives up the exchange after knight g5, rook g7, knight e6. There is no way to save the exchange, of course. He played e4, tried to complicate matters. And this could be dangerous, but it really isn't dangerous enough if I get rid of the correct rook. So for example, taking the f rook would be a mistake because pawn takes pawn check, rook takes, and rook takes g4 check would be probably better for black in the end, although I'm not sure. However, taking the g7 rook solves all of my issues and the position is fine. I also don't have time to take this pawn because he would fork my rook and queen and win my exchange. So I have to take the g7 rook. When he takes, rook takes, notice that there is no more check in the position. And of course he cannot take here because I take his f8 rook and save my knight. And yeah, okay. So in this position, queen takes g7 is forced, and here's why the variation works. I now have this very annoying move g5, which stops the check, saves the pawn, forces a rook trade, and gives me an endgame in which I'm just an exchange up for nothing. And probably instead of having compensation for the exchange, black has a few more disadvantages, which means that according to the engines, I believe that my advantage is more than +2 or more than +2 points of material. Knight to g4, looking into the e5 square, which I think is correct, rook f8, queen f8, rook f1, and now I think the game is just winning for white. And of course there are tricks. Queen and knight can cause a lot of trouble, but with precise play, which you will not see here from me, I made one mistake later on, but with precise plays that should be easy to win. Rook e1, queen f7, king to g3, knight e5, and here's my mistake. So in this position, and I've looked at this for about 5 minutes, but I didn't have the courage to play it, and by this point I was already, I think, below 10 minutes on the clock, maybe below 5 even, when I played my next move. The correct move here was, of course, rook takes e5, and after pawn takes, I just push my pawn, and there's nothing he can do. If he tries to block my pawn, I just do this, and eventually he's going to resign, because what does he do here? The only move is probably king to, well, I don't know, maybe he can go b6, but at least now this is not with check. After, I'm sorry, sorry, king to g7. Queen takes, and I don't know, he does this. There's nothing he can do, I'm just queening my pawn. So after knight e5, definitely rook takes e5 is the easiest win, and for some reason I've decided not to do that. Instead I played a move that I think gives black an equal position, and this is what I've calculated most after the game. So for some reason I wanted to defend my stupid c4 pawn, which is irrelevant, and I played queen e2, which is just a bad blunder because it allows queen f5. And after queen f5, I'm faced with a ton of checks. Queen d3 check, queen f3 check, queen g4 check, knight takes c4 if my queen moves, queen takes g5 check, Very annoying position. I need to defend g5, so queen h5 would be forced, I think. And now queen d3 check, king g2, queen takes c4, rook f1, queen e4 check, king g1, queen e3 check, king h2, queen d2 check, king h1. It's just a horrible position in which I've already given up 2 pawns and have no extra material. Perhaps I'm better. Maybe I can checkmate with luck. I don't know. Maybe black can checkmate me. In any case, it's not winning anymore, or it's not easily winning. A horrible blunder. And after queen e2, he had about 45 minutes on the clock. And after thinking for, I think, 2 minutes, he plays king g8, which does nothing. And now my blunder is justified. It's actually an okay move, because now I get to play queen e4, defend all the squares, and I was really mad at him for doing that. He should have thought longer, and he played a good game, and I messed up. He should have done something about it. I mean, king g8 is just, what's king g8? Anyway, king g7, rook to h1 here, threatening queen h7, king g8, b3, finally defending my c4 pawn, a5, I understand blocking my pawns, but yeah, queen f4, and now it's actually an easy conversion. There's no way for black to infiltrate my position without trading the queens. I'd actually calculated everything. Queen g6. I'm not afraid of queen d3 check, as you are going to see. I just go rook f1, allow queen d3 check, king g2, queen e2 check, rook f2, and he is either getting checkmated or trading the queens off with queen g4. And yeah, now it's finally over. Rook f4, knight e5, rook f6, threatening d6, has to defend with knight f7. g6 is a tricky move which he has to react to. He moves the knight, I take on h7 with check, queen d6. He takes, I take with check. No third options. hg6, rook takes, king f8, rook e6, cutting the king off, b6, king to g3, knight g5, which is a tricky move. If I take on d6, of course, knight to e4 wins my rook. So rook g6, knight f7, king f4, getting my king up. I'm not really interested in winning the b6 pawn or the d6 pawn. I want to get my king into e6 and win. King e7, king f5, knight e5, rook to g7 check, king to d8, king to e6, and now it's over. It's not that he's losing the pawns, even though that's important, but he actually cannot defend a checkmate and his knight all at once. It's really hard. He could go something like knight f3, but then I would eventually force his king into the corner and checkmate with my d-pawn, or queen my d-pawn. So, a tricky game. I would say that I played a good game until bishop g4. Even g4 I think is fine. And I would say that he played a good game until rook to f7. And yeah, so white was probably better. I probably had the king's Indian advantage, the engine always gives, before bishop g4. And then after bishop g4, I'm sure black was better. I don't know by how much, but I think rook to g5 was the move to claim that advantage. Yeah, it was a very stressful game for me. I spent a lot of time. I ended the game on a few minutes. I had a few minutes on the clock. He had, as I said, about 45. So with my new d4 opening repertoire, I definitely need to work on the King's Indian, or against the King's Indian, because this was not good. I didn't feel comfortable with it when f5 came. Okay, yeah, I just want to mention one more thing. If you have time, check out my first article. I started writing for a chess website. I'm going to put the link in the description below. It's a great new learning platform, or a great new learning website, with already a lot of interesting content by several authors, and I'm very proud to be one of them. So if you have the time, please look at the article. I'm going to link it below. Let me know what you think. Let me know what I can do better in the next one, because I'm working on the next one as we speak. Okay, thanks, and stay tuned for more chess. See you tomorrow. Bye.